How do you create a marketing strategy for your business that is one, easy to follow, and two, easy for you to take the necessary action that you need? This is one of the topics I'll be chatting with today with my guest, Alice Benham, speaker, business strategist, product business owner, and author of the Digital Marketing Handbook, a lady who wears many, many, many hats. Alice, for those that don't know you, can you share a bit of background of who you are? And thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's always such a joy to be on the other side of the mic. I've got a podcast myself and I always enjoy when I don't have to be the one thinking of the structure and the questions. It's just nice to have a chat. So thank you for having me, Nicole. It's great to be here. I think you shared a good bit already. Like you said, wear lots of different hats, lots of different arms of my business, working with clients one-to-one, retreats. There's a book, stationery shop, online offerings, speaking at events, but kind of all of those things are under the same umbrella, which is really helping businesses to grow and ultimately take intentional action. That for me is what all of my work is about, is helping people to figure out the action that's going to bridge the gap between where they are now and where they want their businesses to be. So I've been in business now kind of doing this for about 8-9 years. I quit school when I was 16 and kind of accidentally became a freelancer when I was 17. I'm 26 now. So the years between those two have just been a lot of messy action, learning, evolving. Over the last couple of years, my business has kind of evolved to what it looks like today. And I love it. Never thought this is what I do, but it's the biggest privilege.
And I mentioned the book there, the Digital Marketing Handbook. And for those of you watching on YouTube, you'll see me holding up a copy here. But this is a really fantastic tool. Some of the things that we're going to be talking about today are covered in the book. So for those of you that are listening and that want more support with your marketing, go and check it out, because it's not just full of text. It is loads of really, checklists, great examples for you to follow, and very simple, no fluff, no jargon, and definitely recommend for you to go out and get this and as a tool for you to use in your business. But and I have my copy here. Like I said, I need to get that signed from you, Alice, next time I see you. So let's get to it then. In terms of, we're going to be focusing on about how you create an effective marketing strategy and not getting, I suppose, overwhelmed by that. Why do you think people overcomplicate a marketing strategy, and how can we simplify it?
Good question. I guess why these things get overcomplicated, I think, is probably there's partly something in it of those that are experts will sometimes aim to make something feel really complicated so that you feel the need to pay them to do it for you or with you. That's probably part of it, right? Is that there can be things that are really wrapped up in jargon because the experts are talking about something in a really jargoning way, even if it's not intentional. We just speak in these weird marketing terms. If you ever speak to a marketer and they're saying all these what's your ROAS and your CPA and how's your SEO going? And it's like, what do all these things mean? You're just making me feel like I don't understand any of this. I think actually, though, a big part of it is we just don't ever actually spend the time defining what it is and particularly why it exists. Marketing strategy is a kind of combination of words. It gets thrown around all of the time. And I think gets thrown around so much, but so rarely actually gets debunked, of thinking, okay, what are we actually talking about when we say marketing strategy and what does it mean? I am a strategist, and I notice that as soon as I bring the word strategy into something, everyone gets overwhelmed. We can be talking about a topic and people seem to be fairly confident. And then if I go, okay, and let's talk about building a strategy for that, people go, oh my gosh, strategy, that's really fancy. That's really complex. That's overwhelming. I can't do that. And actually what I'm on a mission to do is show that a strategy is simply just a plan with an end goal in mind. And if we think about it in that way, what we can start to think about is not just having a strategy, but using a strategy. So the big reframe I always try and make for people is the goal is not to create a marketing strategy. The goal is to use a marketing strategy. So actually there's no rules over whether it needs to be some 58-page PDF or a lovely looking Notion board or a planner on your wall. It can look a million different ways, and actually how it looks and what it is fairly irrelevant. It's the way that it's used that really makes a difference. So I think that's often where we go wrong, is we think, oh my God, marketing strategy, I need to make this big, complex, fancy thing. That's not really what it means. And if that's our focus, we don't often then create something that's actually useful for us.
And how can you simplify it then? What should be the things that you are thinking about when you are creating a marketing plan?
So there's 3 steps that I tend to follow when I'm building any kind of marketing strategy with people. And it's actually the 3 kind of sections that are within my book. And that was a really intentional decision from me when I was first talking with my publishers about writing the book. They were kind of like, right, we basically want marketing for dummies, but written in your way and not some big huge yellow book full of loads of text. We want it to feel easy for people to engage with. And immediately I knew, like, okay, we need to then have these 3 steps, create the whole structure to the book, because I really believe when we introduce structure and a bit of a step-by-step method, it's easier to take action. So the way that I organize building up a marketing strategy is that step 1 is clarity, step 2 is plan, and step 3 is implementation. So when you're building a marketing strategy, you basically just need to spend time in each of those areas. So the first step of clarity is all about, okay, why are you showing up online? What are your marketing goals? What's your brand identity? Who are you trying to reach? What are you trying to achieve? It's all of that like foundational clarity that then helps you move to step 2, which is building the plan. So that's where you ask the questions of like, what platforms am I showing up on? What kind of content am I creating? How frequently am I showing up? And the reason that that's step 2 and not step 1 is because we should be building the plan with those marketing goals in mind, not going, oh, what would I like to do? Or, oh, Nicole and Alice have got podcasts, so I'm going to have a podcast in my marketing strategy. Or everyone's telling me to do videos, so that's my strategy. No, we go, right, what's the clarity? Let's then build a plan that relates back to that. And then the third step of it, which often gets missed, is implementation. So we don't just build out the plan and go, okay, off I go. We then need to have this conversation with ourselves of, right, and how am I going to implement this? Who is going to be doing each part of this marketing strategy? When am I going to make the time? What systems and processes do I need to put in place to make this happen? How am I going to measure success? So to just break it down into those 3 steps, those are kind of the 3 areas we need to look at. And often when we're refining or improving a strategy, we just need to question which step do we need to come back to? Because often there'll be a part of that feels the weakest for us. So yeah, that's kind of how I organize it.
And then with the clarity side of things, are you looking at a financial goal there as well, in terms of, this is the kind of turnover that I want to make in my business, this is the amount of units I need to sell? Like, so if we're talking about product businesses, is that where you would be looking at your turnover side of things as well, in terms of what your goals would be financially?
Absolutely. And I say with any client I work with, the only person that's going to figure out your goals is you, because your goals are just whatever are important to you about how your business grows and what it looks like and what it does for you. So absolutely. I think that's where also a marketing strategy can only be effective if we have that clarity on our wider business vision. Marketing is a tool. Marketing is not a measure of success. So actually it's a tool that's only best used if we know what we're trying to achieve with that tool. Yeah. I'm midway through renovating this flat that I'm currently in, and just getting a hammer out and having it in my hand does nothing, right? I need to know what I'm trying to achieve with that hammer so it actually creates an end result that's meaningful to me. So yeah, having that clarity of, the financials, how much revenue, therefore what do I need my profit, or often it's reverse engineering, isn't it? What do I need my profit to be? Therefore, what do I need my revenue to be? How many units do I need to sell? How much am I selling of what? And then all of the other goals as well. What do we want the brand's reputation to be? What kind of customer experience do we want to give? How do we want to build community? What other opportunities would we like as founders, and, press opportunities, etc. So yeah, the more clarity you can have on your goals, the easier it is to focus your marketing towards them. And actually, I think the more tangible your goals can be, the easier it is to then measure success. Because then it's easy to go, okay, are we heading in that right direction or not? Rather than like, yeah, I think we're kind of doing something. Like we don't want to be vague, because then we often start just wasting our time.
And do you recommend putting in like personal goals there as well, in terms of how do people want their, I think sometimes people can get very caught up in the professional goals and where they want their business to be. And sometimes they may lose sight of why they started that business in the first place, not just from the customer and the pain points they're solving, but they may have wanted more flexibility or a better work-life balance or whatever that might be. Do you build in those personal goals, or how you're running a marketing strategy that's going to then help you achieve your personal goals as well as your professional goals?
Definitely. And I think the kind of first step of clarity almost has 2 pieces to it. So you've got like the wider business goals that then allow you to set the marketing goals. So kind of what you're speaking about there, I would put into that category of kind of the wider business goals. And when I think about defining, that, the big picture, I split it into two. So I invite my clients to think about the why for them and then the why for others. So the why for them is exactly kind of what you're hinting to there. You know, what do you want your lifestyle to look like as a business owner? What do you want your day-to-day to look like? What kind of flexibility is important to you? What kind of autonomy do you want to have over your day-to-day? What do you want to be doing, you know, in your business? How do you want it to feel to run? And then the external why is more about, you know, the business's growth and your customers and what you want the business to be known for and legacy and impact and all of that fun stuff. So absolutely, we need clarity on those two things. And that's kind of the first piece of clarity. So we can then go, okay, if that's what we want from the business and marketing is a tool, what are my marketing goals that's going to get that? A marketing goal would not be, you know, be able to take a month off every year and have 100 regular customers buying from us. Those are your bigger business goals. Your marketing goal would then be, okay, what are we going to need to do with our marketing in order to achieve those things? Right, we maybe need to increase our conversion rate via email marketing. We need to be more consistent in the way that we are showing up through our organic content. Like, we need to then have marketing goals that feel more actionable, because if your marketing goal is a result, you're probably going to find it really hard to take any action. And you're also probably then going to find it really demotivating if you don't hit that specific result fairly quickly. Yeah, I think there's kind of two pieces there. And you're right, thinking about what you want for you is so key, because I've definitely been there with both of my businesses, product and service, where I've achieved something and then I've realized, well, I'm not happy. I'm not feeling good. This isn't working for me. And then I go, maybe it's not worth it if it's not doing those things for me as well.
How can you make sure you stand out as a brand and connect with your consumer?
I guess the first question is working out what is it about your brand and your products that make you stand out. You know, when we think of kind of USP or brand identity and kind of what you want your reputation to be, most of the time that isn't something that we have to come up with. We just need to understand what that is that's already true about our businesses. Now, the hard thing is that we're so close to them, right? It's hard to see it in that way. I heard the phrase years ago, you can't read the label when you're inside the jar. And that has resonated with me ever since, because when it's your brand, when they're your products, when it's your thing, it's very hard to understand what does make this so good. Why do people like my business? Why do people buy from me? I think that's why it's so important that we're always gathering feedback and doing research and trying to notice what's important to other people. You know, with my product-based business on paper, I built that stationery because they were things that I wanted for myself. And then I found it really hard to think, like, why do other people like them though? What makes this business stand out? And it was only by listening to feedback of other people saying, like, oh, it really helps me to structure my time in a much more kind of logical way, or I really like the way that they're not visually overwhelming, or I really love the way that in the way that you market, that it doesn't feel you know, kind of pushy, and it all feels really intentional. And I'm going, okay, people are telling me what stands out about my brand, so now I just need to make sure that I bring those things into my marketing even more. You know, people don't know what you don't tell them, so we've got to work out what is going to make my business stand out. Why do people choose me? And then in my content, in my website, everywhere, how do I communicate those things as consistently as possible?
You give a lot of examples in the book of people who are doing a good job about over certain things. Who do you think, from a product business point of view, is really nailing that marketing and connecting with the consumer? I'm not asking you to pick favorites now.
That immediately I know. So I'm going to say two, because there's two that come to mind, and they're actually both in the book as case studies. One is my friend Lucy Hitchcock that runs Partner in Wine. Lucy is a master at marketing a product-based business, and she's also just a real inspiration to me around showing up consistently. You know, she's a great example that nothing is ever an overnight success, but if you just keep taking the action and learning and testing, you'll find your way of doing it, and then you can obviously scale with that. I think the way that Lucy always is telling stories, and she's really worked out, you know, your product is never going to be the thing that people really remember you for. What they're going to remember you for is the wider topic that your product is kind of involved in. And I think she's really discovered, she runs Partner in Wine, which is kind of insulated wine bottles and various accessories. And she creates just such great content around wine, which just creates that like wider connection point for people. And she is really good at launching. And actually a really similar example is Isabel Pearl of Pearl Cosmetics, who's also listed in the book. And she, in a very similar way to Lucy actually, but a great example, both of them do it so differently. They've just found what works for them. Again, she's always bringing people on that journey to the point where when she launches something, I always want to buy it, even if it's maybe not even something that I need. And I always think, gosh, that is a master, kind of master plan of launching, because she does such a good job of bringing you on the journey and showing you the products. I think that's what both of them do so well. And what I'm always trying to learn from is that people don't want to be told what you sell. They want to be shown it. They want to be shown the story and the journey and the impact and the why. And I think they both do that like in such an incredible way. So yeah, if anyone needs some inspiration to follow, those two are very, very good at what they do. Something I always try and encourage people to think about when we're, getting that like target audience or whatever it is in mind, is to not focus too much on demographic, but really focus on clarifying the psychographic. So demographic is things like, age, location, gender, whether they're married or not, if they have a sausage dog or a golden retriever, where they go on holiday, like the things that maybe people would write in a census or on their CV, which might make us feel like we have a really clear buyer persona, but ultimately isn't actually that valuable in marketing. Sometimes demographic is relevant, and there'll probably be a few things about demographic which is true for kind of who your product is aimed at. But I would bet that most of what brings your audience together is going to be the psychographic, which is all about who people are beneath the surface. Their values, their interests, their pain points, their challenges, what they're like as people, what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy. If we can clarify those things, I think that's what makes especially organic marketing connect so much more. If I were to think about my product-based business on paper and I just go demographic, knowing someone's gender, age, where they live, how much money they make, it doesn't help me sell stationery to them. But knowing that, there may be a creative business owner, they might be neurodiverse, they might struggle with organization, they might have big goals but not know how to break them down, they might value things feeling, easy to understand and effective. I'm like, okay, now I know how I could connect with those people, because that's actually things that I can then bring into my marketing and bring into my messaging. So I encourage people to think in that way. And it's the answer probably no one wants to hear, but I think how we work out those things is we test and we notice and we research and we learn. Those answers are never going to be given to us. They're never going to land in our laps. We have to work off of our current knowledge, take some action, and then see what we learn from that. Every time that I make a sale, every time that I put content out there, I learn a little bit more about who my audience are, what they like, what they don't. Every time a product launch succeeds and fails, I learn something. I don't love it when it fails, but I'm always grateful in the end, because it teaches me more about who those people are. So yeah, that's kind of how I encourage people to look at it and let it always evolve. It's easy to look at other people and think, oh my God, Lucy, Isabel, they've nailed it. They've figured it out. They haven't. They'll be continuing to get more clarity as they go. And I think we have to see it as a constant work in progress.
And how often should you be reviewing that marketing strategy and either changing it or coming back to it?
That's a great question, because one of the mistakes that we can often make is that we create a strategy or a plan, or make some changes to the overall plan, and then we implement it for maybe 2 weeks and go, no, I need to change it again. One of the biggest things I say to people is that you have to give a strategy consistency before you decide if it's succeeded or it's failed. You cannot launch a podcast, do 3 episodes and decide, well, a podcast isn't for me, because you've given it 3 episodes. You didn't even give it a chance to succeed, right? And so I look at every strategy through that lens of how much do I need to show up consistently before I come back to it and change it. That being said, tweak things on an ongoing basis, but tiny things. I'm every single day tweaking. Oh, okay, I've just learned that certain style of hook or that time of day of sending an email. Okay, I'm kind of learning these details. But I would say on a quarterly basis is roughly when most businesses will best access those bigger changes. So I sit down every quarter and I encourage my clients that I work with to do the same, to really take a step back and look at the data, look at what's happened and go, right, what changes do we need to make? I try not to change a strategy more frequently than that, at least not in a big way, because otherwise we just give ourselves whiplash and we don't ever give it enough action to actually see results. So yeah, quarterly rhythm tends to work for me, but I think it's different for every business. Also, if you ever make a big change, maybe you've completely changed your products or you've completely changed where you're selling, any big pivot in the business should nudge you to go back to your strategy and change things up, because your strategy will only be as good as it is relevant to the business that you have. So yeah, it's a careful balance. I think you don't want to build a strategy once and never think about it again, but you also don't want to build it and after a week come back and change it, maybe because you're worried it's not working. We need to give it the consistency.
And so if you are a business founder and you're spinning all the plates and plates, and you are quite up against it time wise, what are the things that you have seen give the best results? So if you say, right, okay, if this is all you can do, focus on this.
I wish I had a simple answer to this that would definitely apply to everyone. I guess my annoying marketer answer is look at the data of where your lowest hanging fruit is and do that more. Looking at data is so valuable. Look at your website traffic. Where is most of your traffic coming from? Okay, that's a sign of which lever to pull. If you're kind of time poor and you need to look at where's going to be most effective, that's where that energy should be going. I tend to notice for product-based businesses where we often ignore the most is anything to do with email marketing. I don't know if you notice that as well, Nicole, but I tend to see, so much of the conversation around marketing is around social media and going viral and creating content. And that's really relevant and powerful. But when I think of low hanging fruit, how you drive conversion, email really is the place to go. When was the last time that you emailed your kind of past customers with some kind of offer? How are you segmenting people to make sure that they're getting kind of automated but still really intentional feeling sales emails? Looking at that kind of customer journey and thinking about how you can leverage that, I think is often where we can see a lot of impact with a product-based business. I guess if I'm then going a little bit more vague, the other actions I'd encourage people to think about is to have a time where you are regularly looking at the data and what's working and what's not. All of us have limited time. Marketing is really hard to make the time for. Reality is you'll never feel like you've got enough time for it. So you want to make sure that all the stuff you are doing is effective. So really closely looking, and actually product-based businesses kind of have the advantage here, because with service, it can be really hard to close the loop between, someone inquiring and actually what led to that. With a product-based setup, you can often fairly closely link, okay, here's where that person first kind of came from, or here's what drove that conversion. So I think following the data is really important. And then also just my third thing I'd say is make time for being creative. So many product-based business owners, we're so in the weeds, right? Of making the stuff or manufacturing or posting it out or customer service, and actually marketing takes creativity. So working out, how do you give yourself space to get creative? Do you need to give yourself time to consume some other content, or maybe a few it's going on walks, or is it having that kind of regular brainstorming time? Whatever sparks it for you, I actually think the more time that we can set aside to do that, it doesn't feel like an effective use of time at the time, but it will likely then lead you to be able to create more with more ease moving forwards.
So it's light bulb moments in the shower. That's when they come.
Exactly that.
And Alice, where can people find you and how can they work with you?
So my main hangouts are probably Instagram and LinkedIn, and I'm at Alice_Benham on Instagram, and then just Alice Benham on LinkedIn. Share lots of content in both of those places. And then I've got a podcast as well, which has got over 280 episodes. So if by any chance people aren't sick of my voice after listening to this one, then they can head over there. There's loads of episodes around various kind of business and marketing topics, and they're both from me and from some great guests that I've had on. And then my website shares all the information about my work, about the book, about how we can work together. So that's alicebenham.co.uk. And I guess I should say, because I've talked about it a lot here, my product-based business is called On Paper. So yeah, if you search On Paper, it's linked on my Instagram as well. You can come and have a nosy and not take much inspiration from my marketing, because it's not been great over the last few weeks with the book. But yeah,
well, you have
come and hang out over there.
And you have had a book to focus on. So which is the Digital Marketing Handbook, like I said at the beginning, a really great, easy to follow book for you to, as a small business owner, as a product business, just use as your Bible for marketing. Alice, thank you so much for joining me. And I will be back next week with another great guest.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.